Ever wondered where the Rothschilds go when five-star hotels feel too boring? We're talking European destinations where 50,000 euros per night is considered reasonable, where you need family connections just to book a room, and where even most billionaires plan months ahead. These are the places you will never find on TripAdvisor, and the #1 spot has a waiting list that laughs at your bank account. Let's count them out. Number 10. Zurich, where wealth gets managed, not displayed. Let's start with Zurich, because it represents the complete opposite of flashy vacation luxury. And that contrast tells you everything about how real wealth actually operates when nobody's watching. Zurich is almost aggressively understated to the point where it feels boring at first glance. The city is clean, efficient, and designed with Swiss precision that makes everything look deliberately unremarkable. But behind that calm, almost sterile surface sits one of the most powerful financial systems anywhere on Earth. Banks, investment firms, private wealth managers operating with the kind of discretion that makes NDAs look casual. But here's what separates Zurich from every other vacation destination. This is where wealth doesn't just get spent, it gets preserved, multiplied, and positioned for the future across generations. You're not coming here to party on yachts or show off expensive watches. You're coming here to meet with the people who manage the family office controlling your great-grandchildren's trust funds. The city's entire infrastructure is built around financial secrecy and stability that's been refined over centuries. Swiss banking laws, while not what they used to be thanks to international pressure, still offer levels of privacy and security that most countries can't match. When your wealth is properly structured through Zurich's financial institutions, you don't need to perform it because you know it's protected in ways that flashy spending never could achieve. There are no loud signals here because none are needed, and that's exactly the point. The restaurants are excellent but not Michelin-obsessed. The hotels are luxurious but not Instagram-worthy. And the shopping is high-end but subtle. Everything operates on the principle that when your wealth is genuinely secure, you don't need to broadcast it to strangers who don't matter anyway. But wealth management is just infrastructure. Wait till you see where that money actually vacations. Number 9. Costa Smeralda, Sardinia, where wealth becomes cinematic. Costa Smeralda is what happens when developers decide to purpose-build a luxury destination from scratch, specifically for the ultra-wealthy. And the results are genuinely stunning in ways that feel almost unreal. The water here is so impossibly bright and clear that it looks photoshopped even when you're standing right there staring at it. That turquoise Mediterranean perfection gets framed against massive superyachts and pristine marinas designed by architects who understood that every sightline needed to look like a movie scene. Porto Cervo in particular turns into a gathering point for some of the world's most powerful people during summer months when the weather peaks and everyone migrates here simultaneously. But here's what you need to understand about Costa Smeralda. This isn't random tourism where anyone with money can show up and blend in. The entire experience is curated with the same precision as a private members club. The crowd is selective through mechanisms that aren't always obvious but are absolutely effective. Access points are controlled in ways that keep out people who don't belong, and the entire atmosphere feels designed rather than accidental. And you know what's wild? The development was originally created in the 1960s by Prince Karim Aga Khan IV, who bought up massive stretches of Sardinian coastline, specifically to build an exclusive enclave. That origin story matters because it means the place was literally designed from inception to serve the global elite, rather than evolving organically into a luxury destination. The villas here don't just cost millions. They come with implicit social requirements about who you know and which circles you move in. Owning property in Porto Cervo signals something specific about your wealth tier and social positioning that goes beyond just the purchase price. When your neighbors include industrial heirs and media moguls who've been summering here for generations, you're not just buying real estate, you're buying proximity to networks that facilitate the kind of deals that never get discussed in public. Cinematic coastlines attract the wealthy, but our next city trades spectacle for something more valuable. Number 8. Paris, where wealth speaks through culture. Paris operates on a completely different currency than other destinations on this list, and understanding that distinction is crucial to understanding how old European money actually thinks about luxury. Yes, there's enormous wealth concentrated here, billions flowing through the city's financial district and luxury goods headquarters. But the real power sits in specific neighborhoods where addresses alone communicate your social tier without requiring any other explanation. The 16th arrondissement, the Golden Triangle, in the 8th around Avenue Montaigne and Avenue George V, the historic streets of Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and just outside the city in Neuilly-sur-Seine, one of the wealthiest and most discreet suburbs in all of France. These are where you'll find classic houseman apartments with those impossibly high ceilings and ornate moldings, quiet tree-lined streets where tourists never venture, private courtyards hidden behind massive wooden doors, and a level of wealth that feels polished and permanent rather than loud and temporary. Neuilly in particular is known for families, executives, and old money that prefer space, privacy, and a more residential kind of prestige over the density and visibility of central Paris. Here's what makes Paris genuinely different from flashier destinations. Wealth here is not about showing off through conspicuous consumption. It's about knowing how to exist within a certain level of culture, taste, and history that money alone cannot buy. You can purchase a 10 million euro apartment tomorrow, but you cannot purchase 3 generations of family connections to Parisian cultural institutions. You cannot buy fluency in the unwritten social codes that govern elite circles. And you cannot fake the kind of refined taste that comes from being raised in environments where art and literature are valued as much as financial success. The private clubs here include Cercle de l'Union Interalliée, Jockey Club de Paris, and Automobile Club de France. And these prestigious places operate with membership requirements that make American country clubs look accessible. You need sponsors who've been members for decades, you need family background that demonstrates you understand the culture, and you need to prove you'll contribute to the institution rather than just consume its prestige. Culture and history define Parisian wealth, but the next island trades all of that for something rawer. Number 7. Ibiza, the island with 2 completely different worlds. Ibiza has this fascinating split personality, where the version everyone knows and the version almost nobody sees exists simultaneously on the same small island, and the gap between them is genuinely enormous. Yes, there are the famous parties and the clubs where celebrities perform and thousands of people dance until sunrise. But beyond that tourist-facing reality sits a completely different world that operates with such privacy and discretion that most visitors never even know it exists. Cliffside villas with security systems so sophisticated they could protect government facilities, hidden beaches accessible only by private boat, where no commercial vessels are allowed, and small gatherings at estates where the guest lists include people whose names you'd recognize from Forbes and whose attendance is never photographed or publicized. But here's where it gets interesting from a wealth mechanics perspective. The most expensive properties in Ibiza don't even list publicly. They get sold through private brokers who maintain relationships with specific families and individuals, and the transactions happen so quietly that local real estate databases often don't reflect the actual sale prices because the deals are structured through complex arrangements involving corporate entities and trusts that obscure who actually owns what. When you see paparazzi photos of celebrities partying in Ibiza, you're seeing the public face designed to maintain the island's brand as a party destination. But the families spending 50 million euros on estates in the hills above San Jose are living completely separate existences where their vacations involve private chefs, personal security details, and social calendars that revolve around people they've known for decades rather than random encounters with strangers at beach clubs. So basically, the island essentially functions as 2 parallel realities, one that's accessible to anyone with money for bottle service, and another that's accessible only to people with the right connections and social positioning, and the boundary between these worlds is maintained so effectively that most people in the first category never even realize the second one exists. And while 2 parallel worlds on one island is wild, wait till you see the city where wealth becomes institutional power. Number 6. London, where money meets centuries of hierarchy. London is where wealth stops being just personal fortune and becomes institutional infrastructure woven into centuries of history. And that distinction matters enormously when you're talking about where the ultra-wealthy actually choose to exist. In neighborhoods like Mayfair, Belgravia, and Knightsbridge, you're not just dealing with expensive real estate. You're dealing with addresses that carry social meaning accumulated over hundreds of years. You have aristocratic families whose wealth traces back to medieval land grants, and whose family names appear in history books. you have international investors parking billions in London. Real estate specifically because British property law and political stability create wealth preservation that most countries simply cannot match. You have hedge funds, private equity firms, and global finance operations all functioning in the same geographic ecosystem where deals worth billions get negotiated over lunch at private clubs. And speaking of those clubs, this is where London's true exclusivity reveals itself. The private members' clubs here make American equivalents look like community centers. White's, established in 1693, has a waiting list that can span decades, and membership requirements so opaque that even people who get rejected often don't know why. Brooks's, founded in 1764, literally started as a Whig political club and maintains that political intellectual culture today. Annabelle's requires existing members to sponsor you, and even then you might wait years for approval, while the membership committee quietly investigates your background. Here's what makes these clubs genuinely powerful beyond just their exclusivity. They function as neutral territory where people from different industries, different political parties, and even different countries can interact privately without any record of the meeting. When a British cabinet minister, a Middle Eastern sovereign wealth fund manager, and an American tech billionaire all have lunch at the same club, there's no press release, no photographer, no digital trail. Just a conversation that might reshape markets or policy in ways the public never learns about. The residential real estate markets in prime central London operate with the same discretion. Properties in Belgravia or Mayfair frequently sell for £50 to £100 million through private transactions that never appear on public listings. The buyers are often overseas families establishing their London base, and the sellers are often estates disposing of properties that have been in families for generations, and both sides prefer arrangements where the details remain completely confidential. Institutional power is impressive, but the next Swiss resort perfected something even more valuable. Number 5. Gstaad, where discretion becomes the ultimate luxury. Gstaad takes everything flashy about wealth and systematically removes it until what remains is so subtle and refined that most people wouldn't even recognize it as luxury. And that's exactly what makes it so valuable to the people who vacation here. You'll find genuine luxury throughout the village. Massive chalets worth tens of millions, shops carrying the most exclusive European brands, restaurants where dinner for four easily tops several thousand francs, but none of it announces itself loudly. The chalets are designed to blend seamlessly into the alpine landscape rather than dominate it. The shops have understated signage that you could walk past without noticing, and the wealthy residents are intentionally low profile in ways that feel almost socially enforced. There's a culture of discretion here that operates like an unwritten social contract. You don't ask people what they do for a living, you don't discuss net worth or recent deals, you don't name drop or self-promote, and you absolutely don't photograph other guests or post about who you've seen. Violating these norms gets you socially excluded faster than any official ban could, creating an environment where privacy is protected through collective agreement rather than just security personnel. Here's what's genuinely brilliant about Gstaad's model. By removing all the performance aspects of wealth, the showing off, the status competition, the constant need to prove yourself, what remains is an environment where people who've already achieved enormous success can actually relax without maintaining the personas they project elsewhere. When you're surrounded by people at similar wealth levels who've all agreed not to perform or compete visually, you can finally stop worrying about signaling your status through consumption. The village attracts people who understand what quiet power actually means. That true influence operates through networks and relationships rather than visible displays. That privacy is more valuable than publicity once you reach certain wealth thresholds, and that the ability to vacation without photographers or social media, creating permanent records of your location and activities, is worth paying premium prices to maintain. Julie Andrews famously lived here for decades, specifically because Gstaad offered something rare: the ability to be recognized but left alone, to be wealthy and famous but not constantly performing those identities for strangers. That balance, where people know who you are but respect your privacy anyway, is increasingly difficult to find anywhere else in Europe, making Gstaad genuinely irreplaceable for people who value discretion above visibility. Quiet power defines Gstaad, but our next destination built prestige over centuries. Number 4. Lake Como, where wealth stopped performing long ago. Lake Como is what happens when wealth reaches the point where it no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. And that transformation from performance to pure existence creates an entirely different kind of luxury experience. The villas here aren't new constructions designed to impress through architecture or technology. Many of them are historic properties that have been in the same families for generations, or were carefully acquired by people who understood that Como's value lies in its permanence rather than its novelty. You're looking at estates built in the 1600s and 1700s that have hosted European royalty, artistic masters, and industrial dynasties across centuries, accumulating cultural significance that new money literally cannot purchase regardless of budget. You don't come to Como to impress strangers or make business connections the way you might in Monaco or St. Moritz. You come here to exist comfortably within a certain level of life where the pace is deliberately slow, where boats glide across the water quietly without the noise and chaos of jet skis or party vessels, where conversations happen over 3-hour dinners that prioritize genuine connection over networking efficiency. Here's what separates Como from flashier destinations. This is not about access, it's about belonging. The difference is subtle but crucial. Access means you can afford to be there. Belonging means you understand why you're there and how to conduct yourself in ways that respect the environment's essential character. The families who've been summering at Como for generations can immediately identify people who belong versus people who are just visiting with money. And that social stratification happens without anyone ever discussing it explicitly. The most exclusive properties never list publicly and rarely change hands because the families who own them view them as permanent assets to pass through generations rather than investment properties to flip when valuations increase. When a historic villa does sell, it's typically through private arrangements between families who've known each other for decades. And the transactions happen so discreetly that even local real estate professionals sometimes don't know about them until months after they close. Next up, we have a place that turns winter into a stage. Confusing, right? See for yourself. Number 3. St. Moritz, where the global elite perform. If the French Riviera represents summer energy and visibility, St. Moritz is winter prestige distilled into one Swiss Alpine village where the global elite gather annually to see and be seen in ways that feel both carefully curated and genuinely competitive. Skiing is obviously part of the St. Moritz experience. The mountains are spectacular, the runs are excellent, the facilities are world-class. But thinking that people come here primarily for the skiing is like thinking people go to Art Basel primarily to look at paintings. The skiing is the excuse, the justification, the official reason you're here. But what really matters is visibility within the right circles and maintaining your position in social hierarchies that span continents. Private jets line the small regional airport in numbers that would make larger cities jealous, creating a concentration of wealth arriving and departing that aviation analysts track as a proxy for global elite movement. Designer ski outfits become a kind of competitive uniform where people spend tens of thousands on gear they'll wear maybe a dozen times. Not because the performance benefits justify the cost, but because everyone else at your social tier is doing the same and showing up in last season's styles or mass market brands signals you're not keeping up. Events like polo on the frozen lake. Yes, actual polo on ice. Or exclusive galas at historic hotels turn the entire village into a stage where performance is expected and social status gets reinforced through participation. But here's what actually makes St. Moritz fascinating. It's not chaotic, despite all this wealth and activity. It's curated with Swiss precision. The people here know exactly who everyone else is, their family backgrounds, their business successes or failures, their relationship status, their approximate net worth, without ever needing to ask directly because the social networks are tight enough, and the recurring annual attendance is consistent enough that information flows naturally through the community. The hotels themselves function as social sorting mechanisms. Badrut's Palace. Hotel commands premium rates not just for the accommodations but for the clientele. Staying there signals you're playing at a certain level and comfortable being seen in those circles. The Kulm Hotel attracts a slightly different demographic. Carlton Hotel has its own particular character, and the private chalets scattered in the hills represent the absolute peak where families worth hundreds of millions vacation with total privacy while still participating selectively in the village's social calendar. You're not coming to St. Moritz to escape life the way you might at a secluded beach resort. You're coming here to maintain your position in it, to be seen maintaining relationships with the right people, to demonstrate through your presence and participation that you're still relevant within the global elite's social ecosystem. Maintaining elite visibility matters, but the next coastline perfected something even subtler. Number 2. The French Riviera, where wealth reveals its layers. The French Riviera initially appears like one continuous stretch of glamour running from the Italian border to Toulon. Beach clubs, super yachts, champagne, endless sunshine, beautiful people everywhere you look. But spend any real time here and you realize the Riviera is intensely layered, with each layer representing different wealth tiers and different approaches to luxury that rarely intersect despite geographic proximity. Cannes attracts visibility and spectacle. The film festival brings global media attention. Red carpets create photo opportunities, and the crowds signal that this is where you come to be seen by the world. Saint-Tropez mixes old Provençal charm with modern flash, where the old port retains character while beach clubs charge €500 for a lounger and bottle service runs into 5 figures for an afternoon. But then you have areas like Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, Cap d'Antibes, and Ramatuelle, where the wealth becomes quieter, more protected, and significantly more private. Behind high hedges, electronic gates, and long driveways sit estates that rarely appear in any public listings or architectural magazines. This is where the distinction becomes genuinely clear. The more hidden the lifestyle, the more serious the wealth, the more permanent the family fortune. Cap Ferrat in particular represents peak Riviera exclusivity. The peninsula is so expensive and exclusive that even wealthy people feel priced out. Properties here routinely sell for 50 to 100 million euros, and the buyers are typically families who view these estates as permanent holdings to pass through generations, rather than vacation properties to flip when markets peak. The Villa Les Cèdres, once owned by King Leopold II of Belgium, sits on 35 acres and includes a 14,000-square-foot villa that housed one of the world's greatest botanical collections. That kind of historic cultural asset simply doesn't exist in newer wealth destinations. Here's what the Riviera teaches you about wealth stratification. You can have 10 people, all technically vacationing on the French Riviera, with wildly different experiences and zero overlap. One person is at a beach club in Saint-Tropez posting Instagram content. Another is aboard a chartered yacht entertaining business contacts. A third is at a private estate in Cap Ferrat hosting family. A fourth is at a Monaco penthouse attending charity galas. And while they're all within 50 kilometers of each other, they might as well be on different planets for how much their experiences intersect. The ability to move between these layers, to understand when to be visible in Cannes or Monaco versus when to retreat to privacy in Cap Ferrat or Ramatuelle, demonstrates a sophistication about wealth management that separates people who have money from people who understand how to deploy it strategically across different social contexts. And as impressive as this may sound, our number 1 spot makes even the Riviera look accessible. Number 1. Monaco, where extreme wealth becomes compressed competition. At number 1 sits Monaco, because nowhere else on Earth compresses this level of wealth into such a small geographic space, creating a concentration so intense that being merely rich genuinely makes you feel average, and that psychological experience is unlike anything else in Europe. Monaco is barely 2 square kilometers. You can walk across the entire country in under an hour. Yet it holds one of the highest concentrations of wealth anywhere on the planet, measured by both total capital and per capita metrics. You're not just surrounded by rich people here, you're surrounded by people actively competing at the very top of the global financial food chain, and that competition manifests in everything from real estate prices to yacht sizes to which tables you get at restaurants. The harbor tells the story more clearly than any statistics could. Rows of super yachts that look more like floating luxury hotels than boats, each one staffed by crews of 20 to 30 people, maintained year-round at costs exceeding millions annually, and used primarily as mobile symbols of status that demonstrate wealth in ways that real estate or cars simply cannot match. When your yacht is 80 meters long and costs $200 million to build, you're making a very specific statement about your position in global wealth hierarchies. And then there's the real estate market, which operates with pricing that sounds fictional until you actually engage with Monaco property agents and realize the numbers are completely real. Apartments here cost more per square foot than almost anywhere else on Earth. We're talking 50,000 to 100,000 euros per square meter for prime properties, which means a modest 2,000 square foot apartment easily runs 10 to 20 million euros. You're not paying for space or even particularly remarkable architecture. You're paying for proximity, for the ability to say your address is Monaco, for the tax advantages that residency provides, and for immediate access to networks that facilitate deals worth hundreds of millions. Here's what makes Monaco genuinely different from every other destination on this list. Being rich is not impressive here. It's the baseline requirement for existence. The question is never, are you wealthy? But rather, how far above average are you within this already rarefied population? That constant comparison and competition creates psychological pressure that even billionaires find intense. There's always someone with a bigger yacht, a more expensive apartment, better tables at restaurants, more impressive social connections. You're buying into a network where deals, relationships, and power overlap within an absurdly small radius. The same people you see at the Monaco Yacht Club, you'll see at the Casino de Monte Carlo, at Nobu for dinner, at the Monaco Grand Prix, and at private events throughout the year. That overlap creates unprecedented networking efficiency. You're never more than 1 or 2 degrees of separation from anyone who matters, and chance encounters at the hotel bar or grocery store can lead to 9-figure deals because everyone here is operating at levels where those transactions are routine. The tax structure obviously matters. Monaco has no personal income tax, which saves high earners millions or tens of millions annually. But focusing only on tax benefits misses the deeper appeal. Monaco provides a complete ecosystem where everything is designed for the ultra-wealthy, where service standards are higher than anywhere else because providers know their clients have unlimited resources and will pay for perfection, and where the concentration of wealth creates cultural experiences and business opportunities that simply don't exist in diluted form anywhere else. So, when even the Rothschilds and Rockefellers maintain Monaco residences alongside their properties elsewhere, when sovereign wealth funds and family offices run operations from Monaco offices, and when the yacht show becomes genuinely important industry event rather than just luxury spectacle, you're looking at wealth that's not performing for outsiders. It's operating within its own parallel reality that occasionally intersects with the normal world but mostly exists separately. And that's a wrap on 10 European spots where the ultra-rich like Rothschilds hang out. If this changed how you think about where extreme wealth actually vacations, smash that like button and subscribe to Global Status. Also, don't forget to drop a comment and tell us which destination shocked you most. Catch you in the next one.